some more speed records in this day and age. You need coverage.
Coverage? Oh, you mean them little root weevils that crawl around popping off cameras in your face?
Those root weevils write history.
Many of you know that quote by Jack Nicholson in A Few Good Men, "You can't handle the truth." Well, you can, and Event Horizons will give you those truths. So when you're mad as hell and not going to take it anymore from that memorable senior network, you'll know just what to do. We will draw you in and become your news addiction at Event Horizons. Join us Monday through Friday from 10 a.m. to noon Eastern Time at freedomslips.com. At Revolution Radio. Our world team members are Dennis Fetcho, John Ilias, David Dunger, Hyla Cass, MD, Melanie Bridgeton, Jim Mars, Paula Harris, John Trallo, Maria Payan, Christopher Husser, DODDS, Jonathan Orchard, and me, your anchor, Dr. Robin Falco.
If you decide not to volunteer, it will not be held against you in any way.
Sounds dangerous.
It is. Very dangerous.
Count me in.
And that's right here at Revolution Radio, freedomslips.com, where information never sleeps.
Enjoy your extra big-ass fries.
You didn't give me no fries. I got an empty box.
Would you like another extra big-ass fries?
I said I didn't get any.
Thank you. Your account has been charged. Your balance is 0. Please come back when you can afford to make a purchase.
No.
I'm sorry you're having
Come
trouble.
on. My kids are starving.
Thank you for tuning in to Revolution Radio. Here at Revolution Radio, we believe in freedom of ideas, freedom of speech, but above all, we believe in freedom of existence through self-reliance. This station is 100% listener-supported, and as a fundraising promotion, I have a kick-ass free gift for a $100 donation. 35,000 seeds. 25 years in the freezer. Long-term storable, 54 different varieties. So if food prices go crazy, the shit hits the fan, or if you just want to save tons of money every year by creating your own food like I do, grab our seed pack special. Just look for the banner on the homepage at freedomslips.com. Don't be a statistic. Don't be part of the problem. Be part of the solution. We need, as humans, to start taking care of ourselves and not depending on the megacorps to provide unhealthy, nasty food. Included in this package is also a DVD with 900 survival and off-grid living documents and the offline home canning, how to do everything website, all on the DVD. So when you're growing all that food, you know how to can it, store it, preserve it, etc. with all these documents. So thank you for tuning in to Revolution Radio at freedomslips.com. I hope that you will pick up this package and start learning to be free. Revolution Radio, freedomslips.com, where information never sleeps and freedom is one seed that needs to be planted.
What we do in life, it goes in eternity.
Hello, good evening, good day, everyone. I'm your host, Joe Kiernan. Welcome to Researchers on a Mission Radio. We're joined tonight, producing the show. It's Tim Coughlin. Tim C. is back in the studio after 2 weeks being away, and it wasn't from the vicious snow attacks of the Northeast. He was taking a mere hiatus. And co-hosting tonight, as always, Mr. Dave Stinnett. Dave, how are you this evening?
Good evening, Joe.
Good evening to you. I'm sorry to hear about your weather, as we were discussing before the show. Weather's good down here in the south, everybody. We did see the sun. I saw it. It exists. It's still good. It's still good. But Northeast and a lot of other parts of the country really not doing so good, man. Not doing so good.
Yeah, it's starting to break a little bit, but they're saying we still have a little more to come this week.
Yeah.
I don't think we're going to get hit again, but famous last words.
Yeah, right. Well, you really, everywhere in the Northeast, just everywhere really got it really good this year. You guys got a lot of snow. I read something yesterday. Chicago hadn't had a clear day in 87 days. You know,
Really?
Yeah, that's incredible.
That's crazy.
You know,
That may be for more reasons than just weather.
You know, it's funny. One time I was doing training in Chicago on the outside in some little town named Mundelein, and they had one of those. You know, in a neighborhood, they have like the big spill basins for all the drains and stuff. It goes into like a big reservoir. Well, they're like, yeah, during the wintertime, the snow is piled from the bottom all the way up to the top here. I was like, are you kidding? I mean, and it was really deep. I was like, that's crazy.
Well, I really don't miss the snow all that much. Not too much, but I would definitely be asking for spring if I were you guys by now. I got a hint of it, so I have spring fever a little bit. It was a real nice weekend here. But, you know, Dave, I was hoping to talk to you before we get into the topic. Sorry, folks. Tonight we're going to be discussing mostly recent archaeological discoveries using a lot of more modern technology, such as LiDAR. It's a laser imaging satellite system as opposed to regular sonar of the cave days. It could really penetrate through dense forest, and with the lasers, it really gets a detailed scan of pretty much every little inch of the ground. So it's really beneficial for a lot of archaeological digs or surveying at this point. But Dave, I want to talk to you about that video from Australia, that UFO video. You know, I'm gonna come out on this one and say I'm trying to find original footage from the show besides this footage. Footage had been sent in to us, and it was the person was claiming that they recorded it off of a live TV show and sent it to me. They recorded it with their camcorder, sent it to me, and it appears that there is something in the sky. I don't know if it's a drone, if it was meant to be there by the show. I don't know if it was put in there afterwards. But I do have a few people trying to find the original airing of the show, or you know, just a full version of the show, because it's a pretty strange little thing in the sky. But it's one of those things that it's almost too good, Dave. You know what I'm saying? It's something doesn't seem right about it. I don't know what it is.
Has it been posted in YouTube or anywhere?
Yeah, I put it on my YouTube channel. And I'll post it again here in the chat room as well. But, you know, I don't know what to make of it. It was in a couple different parts of the show where it was just appeared to be just hovering in the sky. But there was no parts of the show where camera angles were from up in the sky. But it could just be a joke. It could just be something in the background I'm not able to really make out so well. I would sure like to hear more about it, but the person it came from is a fairly honest person as far as I know. Let's see, I'm going to put it in the chat room now. But, you know, Dave, I don't know what to make of that one, man. You know,
I'm trying to find it because
It looks like it's hovering.
Do you see it, Tim?
Yeah, it looks like it's kind of floating up and down a little bit. I don't know. It looks like a drone.
You know, I don't know. I tried zooming in on it a little bit too. Like I said, it's not. I didn't capture this video myself, so it was sent to me through a camcorder where they use the camcorder.
I'm confusing that one right now with another one. There's another one that was posted. It's been going around.
Yeah. It should be. I have it on Facebook too, Dave. From the other day.
Is that the one where you're asking real or fake?
Exactly.
That's hard to tell. I don't know. I'm no expert at that.
I don't know. I'd like to know more. Well, what I was getting at is I'm really trying to get another copy of the show for comparison, and then if it's really questionable, I'd like to see if we could track down the producers of the show. It's a show out of Australia called the name of the series is called Gondola on the Murray. and the episode is called The Wedding. So if anyone could find it out there, that would be very great. Now, see, I got that in the chat room. Dave, are you still there?
All right.
Sound a little funny on your end over there.
Oh yeah, I'm here.
Okay, all right.
Yeah, the audio popped out on us here for a second.
It's acting up again. I'll blame it on the northeast weather. We're good here. So I'm going to jump right into it with, me being here in South Carolina. I had discovered, well, it wasn't a discovery I made, but I came across a Clovis site, an archaeological Clovis site, right here, right off of my property here. And after speaking with the owner of the land, he told me about a geological survey that was done 15 years ago on the land, and they had dug in a few different places, 6 different places to be specific, and focused on 2 after the original 6. And they discovered lots of artifacts, bones, and a lot of pottery, and just all signs of civilization. And what they came up with was, beginning at somewhere around 10,000 BC to about 7,000 BC, it was a very busy, highly civilized area, like a cityscape per se. It was almost just a main spot of commerce. And then again, from about 3,000 BC to 1500 BC, it was occupied again, which is pretty cool, but there's no signs of any structures or anything like that. Just a lot of, I guess what would be campfires, and they're basically basing it on a lot of the artifacts. And the big key artifacts were the arrowheads, the Clovis points. And the Clovis points, as Dave, you and I, and we've spoke about so many times, they could date them so well because it was almost like no matter where you are here in the Americas, the Clovis were all making the same kind of arrowheads at the same time, and we could watch them. They were making fine arrowheads in 10,000 BC, and as time went on, they kind of just fell apart in their skills, and it's really kind of been the signs everywhere. But after realizing all of this, the Clovis site right here in the area, I learned of several other Clovis sites in South Carolina and in Georgia. And there's a few sites that are quite well known and highly researched, which led me to a scientist here in South Carolina at the University of Charleston. Now, this gentleman says that about 50 miles off the coast of South Carolina, there's strong possibility that with these LiDAR imaging that he has found some sort of a settlement, a civilization. And what he has said was that he's going back 18,000 years, though. He's saying that if we were 50 miles out and you were standing on a rock ledge overlooking the ocean and watching whales and walruses and icebergs behind you on the savannah, you would find woolly mammoths. But that area, this rock ledge he's referring to, is now under 140 feet of water. But he claims that pertaining to the LiDAR imaging with the mapping, he feels there's a strong possibility that artifacts would be found there. What do you think about all this, Dave?
I actually think it's interesting. I mean, I think most people are, I think off the California coast, right, Joe, where a lot of the Clovis stuff was originally found. Yeah,
Northern California into Oregon, yes.
Right. So now now they're coming, around the landmass, following the ocean.
Mm-hmm.
So evidently they're eating off the ocean a lot, or they're equipped to do that. What I do find interesting is like stuff like Tiwanaku. I mean, they give an 18 to 20,000 year rub for their existence. So I think part of me wonders, people were in the Americas, people were in the South Americas, North Americas. What was going on between those people? But it doesn't really seem like we're seeing that kind of interaction between people. But then again, I would, for some reason, I would feel that the Mayans are probably a little more war savvy than the Clovis guys.
Right,
so,
right.
You don't know what happens between these guys. Have they found any traces, Joe, where they've had battles or fights with anybody, or?
No, not the Clovis. There's not that I'm aware of, Dave, but they really just know of them from what they've left behind, but from woolly mammoth bones. They find a lot of the similar style cutting that were similar to the tips that were used, because they actually really did make some sharp tips. But this is also a strange time when the same scientists who put these Clovis people to attacking woolly mammoths, they're the same scientists that say something happened around this time, 10,000 or so BC, because this is also when they start seeing signs of human attacks on mammoths and other animals like that. So they weren't really finding this before then.
The problem with that type of dating, and I think like mysterious origins of man, they have these basically it's an part of sorts. But when they start dating stuff a little too far back, evidently the establishment seems to get a little hairy on it. And I think even Harris, the guy who's part of this study that you're talking about, he was saying pre-Clovis sites still freak people out. And so I'm sure they have to handle that gingerly when they start dating these things. But
well, it does. It does in many ways. As we've talked about it with trying to get DNA from any of these early civilizations or graves, Clovis or whatever man. Like they just got the man from way up north there into Canada, and his DNA was 14,000 years old, and they got a strong sample, and it was their first tie directly to an Asian link, genetically, for being out here in central North America 14,000 years ago. And so it was also a big step for the Clovis researchers as a scientific fact for them that there was existence here, because with the Kennewick man in Oregon, 11,000-year-old skeleton, there's strong arguments on the age of that skeleton because of the DNA. And I don't know where they're going to go with that one, but they certainly are very hesitant to discuss any of these early civilizations here in the Americas. People are very tentative about how long Native Americans were here when it really comes down to it. There's a few.
Another problem that's popped up that's rarely discussed in archaeology is the fact that salt water, you can take a clam or something and you can dip it in salt water and let it dry and carbon date it, and it will date 1,000 years older than what it is. So, when we talk about post-Diluvian times and stuff like that, and if the Earth was covered in that kind of water, it would be salt water. So when people start dating these bones, a lot of this stuff was underwater for a long time, and the water's receded, and boom, and now we dig them up and start dating these samples. I think some of that's kind of speculative, even if they give a certain date.
Right. Well,
I think there's a bevy of people who are squidgy on the carbon dating. Let's put it that way.
I'm with you there because
some of this stuff could be far older than what we're getting.
Well, the salt water is a huge difference. I think people don't consider that all too often, especially with the oxygen content or how much oxygen it really gets. But Tim, are you still here with us?
I'm there.
You're so quiet. Tim, weren't you telling me something recently about the corrosive of salt water compared, like with the deposits of soil salt water?
Well,
it
we were
leaves large
discussing
deposits. Is that what you were saying?
the last conversation I had with you about saltwater. We were talking about the obelisk in Central Park and how deteriorated it's become in just the short period of time it was there. And it
Yeah.
lasted for thousands of years in Egypt, and they put it up in Central Park, and within 50,
Okay.
60 years it deteriorated. But
Yeah.
yeah, no, that was the last I remember talking about.
Yeah.
Salt.
The obelisk in the Rust Belt. That's right. That's,
Right.
yeah. Bad
No,
idea.
Salt does.
Yeah.
Bad idea. Yeah. Uh, well, maybe it wasn't Tim. I was under the impression that saltwater, just very much like the oceans, really break everything down. And, sometimes I think, how did Egypt or, the Sahara, really all northern Africa, how did it get so much sand? Because there are a lot of signs that the pyramids, when they were erected, or at least at some point during them standing, that there was water and some sort of more of a tropical climate, or a little better for cultivation and such. And we find whale bones in the deserts through Africa. But, Dave, if we're just talking about this one site here off of South Carolina, and this gentleman's saying possibly 18,000 years old, but his own research is really giving him that date. As you and I both know, there's no evidence that can assure us 18,000 year settlement is in the realm of possibility yet. I sure would like to see the results of this guy's research, and hopefully something will come out of it. But what's amazing to me is this guy saying, whatever it is, 18,000 years ago, if he was standing on this rock cliff, you would be looking down at the ocean, and you'd have a savanna behind you. And currently that rock cliff, he's saying, is 140 feet underwater. And so the seawater was below that. So fair estimate, let's say 200 feet. Since this possible civilization of 18,000 years right off of my coast, that means in 18,000 years, the ocean's gone up 200 feet here.
He's going to have to get James Cameron to get down there.
Well, I mean, I think it's amazing. Now, is it possible 18,000 years ago near Egypt, the ocean's gone up 200 feet? Because I would think the Mediterranean would really start becoming quite small at this point if that sea level was down 200 feet around there. So sometimes I think, maybe our continent got pushed up a little bit, or I'm not too sure. But 200 feet around a lot of other parts, especially just particularly the Mediterranean, would be an incredible difference. Maybe I just don't recognize it so much because our continent it's pretty big. But
if you look at the Nile Delta, you look at, that obviously is the only green
right
of Egypt right now. It's all lowlands there.
Yeah.
But as you go further into the whole continent, really, the areas are more mountainous, and even if it's all just sand and it's just desert at this point, I'd be interested to see what the sea levels really are. What the altitude of the highest points really are in Africa.
Well, I know they just in the last 2 years or so found a lost city that was just 20 miles away from Alexandria, Egypt, another coastal city. It's right there in the bay. It's just underwater. And so it's since the time of Alexandria, so, ballparking at 2,000 years, this city is completely submerged, where it's just been lost, where, boats don't even hit the monuments anymore. So in 2,000 years, the water around there has gone up, or something went down. I know
There was something
got hit with an earthquake. God,
Yeah, there was a big ship, Joe, or something, either in the Virginias or maybe somewhere near you. But it was a couple years back. But maybe it was an old paddle boat or something. But they're following the coastal route, and they're saying how much the silt had gotten silted up there, and the water line was actually further out in this case. But they dug through all that muck and mud that was now the shore, and underneath of it was the boat. and everything was still intact. I mean, they had like, pickled eggs and mason jars, the whole schmear. But I mean, they had wine and gunpowder and the whole thing, but it looked like it had sunk and everything was still intact. And because the mud kept all the oxygen out, everything was kept, perfectly intact. So it was a really sweet
Wow,
find.
that's pretty cool.
You're thinking that's not all that old, and that got covered up pretty quick.
Right. Well, you know what else always jumps out at me, especially here on the east coast of North America, is we have a very, very large continental shelf underwater there. Where 20, 30 miles out, it's really only 40, 50 feet deep. In a lot of these places, it's just a giant sand shelf, and then it drops off severely. But off the coast of the west coast of North America, and even going on both sides of South America, they don't have a huge sandy continental shelf like we do.
Yeah, you can find sandbars a couple 100 miles out to sea.
Right. But I mean, ultimately, if you look at Google Earth, we have a very large continental shelf underwater. As if, if the water did go down a whole lot, it would expose a great deal of land, as opposed to other continents. If the sea level went down, it's a lot of these coasts where the coast hits the ocean, it's just pretty much gets pretty deep right away. But here on the East Coast, that's why our jet stream's so far out there. Our Gulf Stream, it's way out there, man. We got a huge continental shelf, but I would imagine there, if the sea level was down a whole lot, there were civilizations there. I mean, we still crowd to the coast today, no matter where we are.
To get back to what you were saying before, Joe, your original question regarding the Sahara, where did all the sand come from?
Yeah.
And I mean, honestly, it probably was just, as we've been saying, the pre-Diluvian world.
Yeah.
Once the entire area was underwater, that tide's just going to pull sand from the Atlantic.
Right. It's a lot of sand.
It is a lot of sand.
It's a lot of sand, man.
It's a lot of sand, and then to find a whale, an entire whale, carcass find there, or the entire.
Yeah.
That's that leaves your jaw open, because you're like, man, this is pretty far inland.
It sure does, and I know, Dave, you've mentioned it before about possible water erosion on the pyramids. How you could see up the top caps don't appear to be affected as much as the lower portions, and it's just it seems plausible. It sure does.
That's an interesting. Yeah. And when those guys present it, I mean, you look at all three of the pyramids down the line, and all basically all the capstone parts, all the pointy parts, all that stuff still has their stuff, but the rest of it's raked.
Yeah.
And you're like, you can see a big wave going through here, or consecutive waves or something, and just at a certain height, and just removing everything or just trashing it where that would be that. And you're like, yeah, I can kind of see that.
Yeah, and I could also see a lot of salt water over a little period of time just killing everything, That's why the only things left are stone monuments, things that really didn't get moved around.
But what's amazing to me is that, like, when they found just in the bay of Alexandria, how they're pulling sphinxes and other statues out that are in great condition.
Yeah.
If you've seen any of the stuff they pulled out of recently. But
yeah,
they've been underwater for thousands of years, and yet they're in great shape. And then you look at the weathering that's been done to, some of these other structures, and you think, okay, salt water, yeah, but how do these? I'm talking about the sphinxes and the statues. The detail is still there. You can still make out the face and the other features of these things. It's interesting.
They really did have some great artworks of sphinxes and other monuments in Alexandria that they're pulling out of the bay. They're some real gorgeous pieces of work. It's pretty cool. It's amazing what these people used to do with stone.
I'll do a little bit of shameless promoting right now, Joe.
Please.
I actually have, for the April 12th conference in New Jersey, Robert Schock, who did the water on the Sphinx paper.
Mm-hmm. I was hoping you'd mention it. Well,
another guy from
he's got right to suggest these things. I'm one of those people that would suggest it too. I mean, the Sphinx clearly, in my opinion, looks like it's been eroded. by water from the top down. It's quite obvious.
You could put it right in the middle of the Grand Canyon; it'll fit in.
You know, it really does. I don't buy a lot of scientists say the pyramids, the erosion on the bottom 2/3 of the pyramids, the reason the erosion is different as opposed to the caps on them, you know, it was just the result of generations and centuries of sandstorms. But, you know, these sandstorms are 10 times as high as the pyramids, these furious storms that come through there. And it would have stripped the entire pyramid over time, not just the bottom portions of it. And it didn't bury them.
Another thing, they usually say that the locals, you know, took the outside stones to make their mosques and stuff like that. Right. But they seem to do it in a very uniform way, and that's a real long distance up there. And I don't remember anywhere in antiquity ever, you know, somewhere there should have been some files kept by the Muslims, I would imagine, or the Arabs, as to them tearing down, you know, taking out the outer blocks and using them for stuff. Because that job alone would have been a nightmare. And I still don't see them being able to do it.
You got a good point there, because all the way up to the top of the Great, I mean, think about how high they would have to go to remove those stones, and I'm sure they weren't small.
Yeah, that's crazy town.
Right, and I know they look really close to Cairo, the city streets of Cairo, but I'm sure it's quite a hike to actually get out there to those things through sand. It's like walking on the beach. It's every time you walk on the beach with a cooler, never mind a giant slab of stone. You would drag a cooler through the beach.
Now we got to get into town.
I'd say I'd rather take the stone off my neighbor's house when he's not looking.
But it still leaves us with the question: where did all those go? You know, there's 3 pyramids, and there's a lot of stuff missing.
There is, and it's really, there's a few pieces they claim to originate from the pyramids. There are a few that's possible I've seen around, but with the amount of missing stones, I would expect to see a few other complete buildings done in the city around with these things. And
maybe they just use stucco.
Well, these stones were massive. If someone was going and taking stones from there, they were going out and breaking pieces off.
Yeah.
I don't even know how you would attempt to move something like that, just if you need.
In my Western vanity, I have to admit, you have to realize too that those people have been busting stone for a long time, so they may have broken them down into small cubes and transported them that way instead of making great big.
Yeah, it's very
that makes sense.
Well, it's lasted a long time. I'm glad that people found respect in it. Like the Sphinx could have been a lot worse off. I know that was found buried up to its head around the time of Napoleon. So
I was busting on Andrew Collins because I had gotten a report, I don't know, last year sometime, and it was the Muslim Brotherhood in Egypt wanted to tear down the pyramid and the Sphinx because they said they were idols. And I was like, oh man. So I shot that over to him, and he's just like, "Oh, they're just moderates or whatever." And I'm just like, "You're killing me," So then it was like a month or 2 ago, or before the coup, and they basically said it again. So I sent it over, or no, that's what happened. All of a sudden, he pops up, and he's got the article, and he's like, "I can't believe they're going to do this." And I was just like, "Well, they're just moderates." And it was just one of these things. It was like everybody gets all crazy. And it's like if Egypt takes down the Sphinx and the pyramids, they will have no tourists.
Right, but hopefully it's well beyond tourism. I mean, I'm sure you and I and Tim, I sure would fight against it. It would sound completely irrational to blow them up or tear them down, because blowing up a few of these things, it's not uncommon. Over in certain parts of the world, there's been a few structures.
The pyramid in Peru.
Right, we got the one. That's right, Tim. We got the one in Lima, Peru. That was a 5,000-year-old pyramid, gone, just blown up, knocked down, whatever you want to call it. And this is in an area where you're not allowed to touch any sites pre-Columbian, without authorization, and It's too bad, Tim. I really have to say it's. I don't know what the benefits of it really are. From what I gathered on that one, it was a construction relief. It made it very easy to take that pyramid out of there to allow for a road to go through. But obviously, the people who did it were not supposed to do that. And Peru is questioning the possibilities of pressing charges on them. And I hope they do, I think. Just blowing up a 5,000-year-old pyramid to put a road through there, it's kind of stupid.
Wasn't there an article this summer or this past winter, Joe, or maybe in the last fall, where they had bulldozers going across the Nazca lines and covering up all the lines, and everybody's like, "What are you doing?"
No, I didn't know about that. No.
Yeah. Well, the other thing a lot of people don't realize is that the people in Peru, and it's funny because there's some of them on these recent L.A. Marzulli DVDs when he's out in Peru with the elongated skulls.
Oh, yeah.
But a lot of the people say, Peru's like one great big giant graveyard. They're like, there's like bodies everywhere, So.
Well, they're amazingly preserved too. He's in the deserts, in the desert regions of Peru.
Yeah.
Yeah, they have amazing mummies in the desert. That's another part. That whole region of Peru on their coast, I would imagine because of the mountain range, that whole coastal region is just it's been like the same dry, arid climate for like 5,000-6,000 years. Not much has changed with that climate there. And nothing grows there. It's just basically just so dry. The sands preserve everything.
Just this afternoon, I was watching a clip from Watcher 6, actually, Dave, and they were talking about that very site and how they just walked around and basically, stumbling over body, bones, just scattered throughout that whole area. This one large graveyard.
He's like, how? Yeah, he's like, how big do you think this is? And he's like, about 7 miles.
Unbelievable.
Like, that's a lot of people.
Yeah.
Man. It's a lot. Now, besides the pyramid in Peru, which is really crappy that they had to take it down, they actually did find a few other settlements. And discussing, folks, I'll post this one in the chat room too. This is one here, guys, I'm going to talk about. This is one discovered with the LiDAR radar. I guess I can't even say radar with LiDAR. But it's an old Mayan city. And it's pretty darn cool, actually. It's 7.7 square miles. And they've known of it for a few years now. But it's buried deep in the rainforest, and they really can't get to it. It's really not accessible. A few people have trekked through there, but even with radar, they weren't able to get much of it. But now with the LiDAR, they were able to get a 3D model of the Earth and without vegetation, so they could see all the manipulations to the land and all the monuments that are there. And there's a pyramid there. There's a few of them, a couple that appear to be smaller ones, maybe several. But nonetheless, there's another civilization right here that's popping up in Central America with pyramids, thousands of years old, that's just swallowed up by a rainforest, and we really don't know anything about it. Just probably a lot of good information sitting there, and hopefully we could get there to it before it gets really ransacked. But there's a whole bunch of these other places. I wouldn't be shocked if we were finding a whole bunch more all throughout the Central and South America and these rainforests. It's amazing what they're finding in there.
Well, last year they found some underwater pyramids off Cuba. So, I mean, it's...
I sure would like to see some pictures of that.
That's prolific. Yeah, there were some underwater pictures. As best of my knowledge, it was, it seemed to be on the up and up, but.
Well, you see, now this comes down, again, with, like, the continental shelf. I'm going to say it's likely because it's ultimately not as deep as, the the main part of the Atlantic Ocean. And Cuba's not far. It's right off of, well, bordering Gulf of Mexico right there.
Yeah, I mean, we get the immigrants that were on, the boat people that were coming here, so
right,
evidently it can be done.
Right, and Gulf of Mexico's not deep, and we have off the coast of Alabama a forest, a large forest of huge cypress trees. The forest is 50,000 years old, and
really,
yeah, and what had happened, they're speculating, is at some point a vast, huge deluge of water came down what we would call the Mississippi Basin now. They said it probably would have spilled over towards the ocean, but the Appalachians didn't allow it to happen. And it poured out into the Gulf of Mexico. And for whatever reasons they came to this conclusion, they felt the water came from glaciers melting, because they said it was very cold water for reasons I really don't know. But nonetheless, a lot of water poured into where we know the Gulf of Mexico now. And something happened where land had dropped from the weight of the water, or just that much water came in. But there was so much soot from the time of this water pouring into the Gulf that it buried these trees completely. And when Hurricane Katrina went through the Gulf of Mexico, it stirred things up so much that a fisherman got his nets caught in this forest of trees, and he kept the site a little bit of a secret. And then he found a team of basically treasure hunters, salvage treasure hunters, about this site, because these trees were worth a fortune. And they were sitting on the secret and pulling them out one by one and making a great deal of money on them. But then they found out, now that they're exposed to the regular waters of the Gulf of Mexico, they're deteriorating rapidly. So now they're in a big rush to just pull them all out of there. So there's like a mass salvage of these trees going on right now.
That's an industry. So I know you guys were discussing that last week as well.
This is 15 miles off of the coast of Alabama. So that's a lot of water to sink a forest. And the good what they were trying to say was it wasn't a slow thing. These trees were healthy and then buried. So
were they standing straight up or were they over?
They are suggesting they were, the majority of them were standing, and some are vertical now, some are twisted within each other. It's just like a patch of a forest. I want to say like 5 square miles, something like that.
Fascinating.
Yeah. And they said these trees, again, like we were discussing with a lot of older trees here on Earth, these trees, they said these are cypress trees that aren't around today. They're giant cypress. Huge
now you said 50,000 years old?
Yeah, 50,000, right?
There's so many different variations of the cypress tree. It's not just the typical pillar type ones that they have around here.
And Cypress Hill.
That's
we have cypress trees around here.
Sure.
We do. And some of them get pretty big.
Mediterranean, they have the big broccoli, which are the really tall ones, and they don't look like...
I'm not familiar with the big broccoli.
Yeah, they look like a big piece of broccoli.
No kidding. This
anyway,
pretty cool. That sounds interesting.
Moving back to that, the LiDAR, you had mentioned that this was the city that they believe they found in Honduras, right?
Oh, no, but I would love to talk about the Honduras one. Yeah. You want to talk about it, Tim?
Well, sure.
Yeah.
That one really, I don't know, it sticks. It hits me because I read a book, I don't know, 5-10 years ago. It's called The Codex by Douglas Preston.
Uh-huh.
And it was all about this white city. And I had never heard of it before then. Then I did my own little research and found that, yeah, I guess that the legends are true, this and that. But when I read about this, when they were, like a year ago, when there was some scientists that were talking about this, doing, possibly finding some structures and this and that, it piqued my ears. Now, it's exciting stuff because if it's untouched for God knows how many years.
Right. I mean, that's the key thing in my opinion, right?
Yeah.
I mean, it's nice to know that this old legend really might be true. It's, the White City, not the city of gold, but yeah, this is one of those lost stories that Cortez had mentioned it in a letter to Emperor Charles V, and but his mention of it was that he never found it.
Yeah, he spent great efforts to try and find it, but
yeah. Well, then in 1940, we have a gentleman. What's his name? Theodore Mord. Theodore Mord. In 1940, he came out of the jungle claiming that he found a lost city, and it was named the Lost City of the Monkey God. And it's somewhat in that same general area, so who's to know if the city of the Monkey God is the White City? Hopefully we'll find out. There's just not two lost cities in there because they both sound incredible. But this one right here, man, this is another cool one. This one in Honduras, because it was found with LiDAR, and it's something people have been looking for a very long time. It's in a very, very dense part of the jungle, hostile terrain. This is where they have the jumping viper in this part of South America. So
I'm not going there then.
Right. I would imagine it would be very difficult having people coming out of this dense jungle telling you where the lost city is when you have jumping vipers.
You know what? It's not so much the snakes; it's the bugs. Because the bugs down there are fungus, and half of them can kill you or paralyze.
Right. It's funny you should say that, because the jungle that this civilization in Honduras is found in, the name of the jungle is Mosquito. So you don't name it a jungle mosquito unless that's your biggest enemy in there, Like if you said it's a jaguar jungle, I know what you're talking about. I know what I'm looking for. But I would imagine they got some monsters, because I've heard stories of, early explorers heading through these jungles talking about mosquitoes just leaving softball-sized bumps on you. And oh, my goodness. I don't even know what I've... No, not this guy. I don't know if I can handle that. I think I'd rather take my chances with the jumping viper than a couple giant mosquitoes.
We were discussing a little bit before the show that everybody's starting to use the LiDAR now, and it's giving some really spectacular, images, so we don't have to be dealing with mosquitoes anymore.
That's very true.
There's one for technology.
I really wish that they would make LiDAR a little more available. You can find a few different LiDAR sites. The USGS has a good data bank of LiDAR for North America, but there's a lot of spots, obviously, in North America. Either they haven't scanned, or you're just not going to get those scans. I did find a scan for my area, and I could say, folks, I was completely fascinated with the LiDAR image of my area, because it really looks like I'm on the moon. I have there's hundreds of craters here in my county. It's absolutely amazing, and 90% of them you really are not even aware of just day to day. It's really incredible. If you could grab LiDAR in your areas, I think you would all be amazed. It's really cool. And so I hope they do apply this more to archaeology. I understand it's very expensive, but like in this case here in the Mosquito Rainforest, they said what they spent on this was a great deal of money to rig the LiDAR to this plane and bring it down there to South America. But they said what they spent, though, they also had saved 10 years of excavating. Where, they virtually had a scan of, everything on the ground and where they should be digging. Not just so much where's the location of the city. They know where they should be digging for which structures. Because it's the rainforest. I'm sure vegetation's completely covering these things. And I hope trees aren't growing out of them, but it's quite possible. The rainforest is, man, that is a dense rainforest down there in South America.
And most of it is swamp. There's a lot of swamp there, and that you can't just get around by foot. You can't get around by fan boats. You've got to huff it through and carry a kayak or something with you, because that's just
tough
terrain.
If you look at the early Spanish, records of coming to like North America and coming up through Belize and places like that, they thought this was like the most godforsaken place in the face of the planet, because between like the thunder and electric storms that we got and all the bugs eating them up all the time, they're like, I can't wait to get back. I can't wait to get home. This is horrible.
Never mind crossing the ocean in the hurricanes. It's like, they got here and it was tough. Right. But I think they made up for it. Their frustration showed. They took it out on the people pretty well. It's pretty obvious they weren't happy. But that I'll use that as a segue to the DNA. How they extracted the intact DNA from Palenque's Red Queen. This Red Queen is pretty cool because I happened to see a picture of it, and I don't know if I ever had before, because these pictures, I was really amazed on how red the skeleton really was, and I don't really think I was aware of it, because this is a lot of pigment or whatever it is on this skeleton. I would just imagine if this were the same sort of pigment used for paints and clothing of the sorts at that time, this would have been very expensive, because this is a very important person. I have no idea what the significance of the amount of this red stuff. But
they think it may be Bacall's wife.
Yeah, I mean, that would be pretty darn cool.
It's interesting because he was the Jade King. Am I right about that?
Yeah.
I don't know, Tim. Yeah, maybe.
As I remember, he always had the glasses.
Now, I know they were able to, from this red mummy, they were able to get a lot of really good DNA. They were even able to get collagen from the vertebrae, which is incredible, because it really looked like water had damaged this thing pretty bad. But now, I believe the Red Queen, this was one of the recent finds from under one of the pyramids, right? It was in this, her tomb was a recent discovery?
I don't think it's, like, way recent.
Oh, okay.
They have dated her back to, roughly 1,300 years, so, we got a pretty good run there.
Yeah, I just don't know when we found the tomb.
Well, it was funny because I was going through some of my old archaeology magazines, and I remember the article on her, but it wasn't something recent, as I remember, maybe a couple years ago. Generally they'll dig something like this up and run all the preliminaries and then release some information on it.
Yeah, or it could be something like the Dead Sea Scrolls, where I know you recently saw an article I read you had there, where they found a lot of these other documents dating back to that time, a lot of other scrolls stuffed in the caves, and it's a great discovery, and I hope they translate them and release them, but I still know about 80% of the Dead Sea Scrolls haven't been released from the 1940s.
Well, one of the articles, Joe, actually says that they returned her back to Palenque. I guess, the town wanted her back in 2012, so evidently it's been for years.
Wow. Okay. Because I would have guessed around that time they would have found her. I could have sworn I heard them finding one of the queens, but it's really interesting how they still did the same kind of burials. Very ritualistic, like in monuments. Just as we see in Egypt, and it's going far back. It just really leads me a lot. Just look at the burials and the chambers that they build. It's so hard for me to believe that there was no no commerce or travel over the oceans back then. I really think that there had to have been a lot of seafaring. I really do. It's just too many coincidences in building.
I think it was a requirement. You know, you have the Phoenicians in history, and
Mhm.
I mean, you have a lot of great sailing races. The Vikings in history,
right.
you know, they just didn't become the Vikings overnight. They've been doing it for a real long time. So
Yeah, you're right.
I think once upon a time you had to be a seafaring group in order to expand anything you were doing.
Well said. Well said. All right, folks, stay with us for a few minutes. We'll be back. Don't go anywhere. And we'll be talking more about recent discoveries in archaeology. Welcome back, everyone, to Researchers on a Mission Radio. I am Joe Kiernan. Dave Stinnett, my main man, is right here with us. Tim C., producing the show. Folks, I'd like to remind everyone here at freedomslips.com, Revolution Radio, we are the world's largest listener-supported radio. I would encourage everyone to please find freedomslips.com, make your way to the chat room, get yourself familiar with some interesting people and topics and conversations. There is 2 studios always going, Studio A, Studio B. You can find all scheduling in there. Folks, I'd like to remind you in this ever-present day where we are just being very careless with Mother Earth and everything else related to her, that I would recommend we're going to have to take a serious look at investing in the seed pack, everyone. We got 35,000 non-GMO seeds. 35,000 non-GMO seeds. Non-GMO, folks. You really don't need anything anything GMO. With this seed pack, you'll be able to keep these seeds up to 25 years in the freezer, up to 15 years, if not in the freezer. Along with the seeds, you'll get all the proper instruction manuals and everything you'll need to start fresh if you need to. It comes with your bug out bag, as it's called, and everything you'll need to just bust out and get going. It'll teach you how to cultivate, to irrigate, to how to properly just start fresh, folks. It's a lot more than a seed pack. I'm sorry, what's that?
I said how to propagate.
And you know what? Not too many people know these days. Unfortunately, if anything major cataclysmic happened and a great majority had to start fresh, a lot would be weeded out rather quickly, I'm afraid to say. And no pun intended with the weeds and seeds and all, you know. So, folks, we were talking about LiDAR, a sophisticated laser system that basically is a radar, but using laser imaging, and it's able to get a detailed map of the ground without vegetation wherever it is used. And over the last few years, it has been used over several places over the globe in hopes of finding archaeological sites or early civilizations, basically early traces of man. We could tell with LiDAR even over a dense jungle where land has once been manipulated, where mounds have been built or roads have been put in, structures built, or just anywhere humans have left a mark, they're able to tell. And it would be great to have everywhere mapped out. Maybe one day we'll eventually get there, because just over the last few years with the LiDAR imaging, we're finding a lot of places on dry land we were completely unaware of, not to mention the oceans and everywhere else we're trying to go. So we found the Lost White City, or the City of the Monkey. I'm not too sure. Maybe a bit of both. They'll find out as they make their way in there. But guys, did you see the article that came out? If I could jump over to it, where scientists were trying to create a genetic map of history, and this thing was coming out. It's the same research center that was going to be working on the Red Queen of Palenque. What they did was they were obviously analyzing human DNA, and from just about 1,500 people from 95 different populations of the world, they were able to sequence all the DNA to basically put it into a timeline where all genetic markers and variations occur from one kind of person to another. And with these markers, they're able to mark certain points. They feel quite confident on, such as if you had your DNA tested, they might tell you if you have some of the same traits that Alexander the Great had. It's pretty incredible they could do such a thing, but they feel confident that they have mapped out the DNA sequencing to a historic line that they've gone back 160 generations, which is approximately 4 millennia, 4,000 years. So it's pretty cool that they're able to do this. I'm sure it's not going to get everyone to go over and hand their DNA over so quickly to find out their historic routes, but it's pretty cool nonetheless that they could tell you a lot of these markers, and they could pretty much tell you with your DNA where you were 1,000 years ago, 2,000 years ago, and so forth. I think that's pretty neat, because I know a lot of people are unaware of their own family ancestry just 100 years from today. They know about 100 years worth of family history, and that's about it. So it's pretty cool.
I was going to say, I remember I was following it at the time, and it was the World DNA Study, and they were collecting DNA samples from everybody, every little tribe, and basically they had tracked it back to about 4,000 years ago, and the original group started out at the base of Ararat, which I know the biblical guys were keeping an eye on, because that basically backed up not only a flood myth, but it backed up
But you can't say anything Ararat without getting hesitation from somewhere, Yeah,
it's a mountain range, but evidently that's what the DNA study. They said this is where it originated, and they're like, yeah, we've been telling you that the whole time.
Wow, that's pretty cool.
Yeah, it is pretty cool.
Yeah, no coincidence there, I'm sure. No. But did you ever hear this story, guys? It was in the UK just a couple of years ago, where they found in England, they in this little village, smaller village, they found a skeleton of a man that was about 10,000 years old, and a teacher, and students in his school, they thought it would be a good idea if everyone in the class and students and all did a DNA test and have their DNA compared with the skeleton, and see what's the chances anyone from the class is still related to this guy. How neat would that be? And I thought it was an excellent study. I thought it was pretty cool. And it turns out one person was in fact a descendant, and it was the teacher. It was the teacher of the class. Yeah.
Really?
But yeah, but I thought that was pretty neat. You know, the skeleton's 10,000 years old, and sure enough, he has a descendant in the same town. You know, that's pretty cool. Pretty,
cool. Yeah, they don't move around much, do they?
No, he's a homebody. I'm sure. He's a husband man. He stays home. I'm sure. Yeah, it's pretty cool. Though. It's a neat study.
It's funny. People say, I've heard people say it that Americans, like you guys have it in your blood to be like adventurous and do crazy stuff and this, that, and the other. Because your folks basically, came to America with hardly anything in their pockets, and they're just willing to take the chance. I'm like, it's in your DNA. You guys are used to taking chances, and I was just like, yeah, it kind of used to be like that, I think.
Well, you got part of it right, but the other problem we got here with, especially here in the Americas, is a lot of families are obviously of immigrant nature at one point or another, so their roots really often kind of lost or forgotten. Until I really started searching, I really only know of my family up until when they came here from Europe. Really, I didn't know much about the days there, and crap, that's just 100 years ago.
That was the cool thing about the World DNA Study, because you had groups of people who were thinking the American Indians were like the lost tribe of Israel type stuff. And when they went and did the DNA studies, they turned out to be more Mongoloids. So they had come here in some sort of migration once upon a time. So that, cut out a lot of speculation. So I thought that was pretty cool.
Well, that makes sense to me, too, because of the land bridge theory.
Exactly.
Well, that's not even theory anymore, really, but yeah.
Well, if 18,000 years ago, this one scientist from the University of Charleston here is saying the sea level was, approximately 200 feet lower than it is today here, that land bridge approximately around that time should have been very accessible. Never mind just from the ice. But again, that would also be considering the sea level was the same as it is now everywhere. Like I was suggesting before, it's if the Americas are just up a little bit higher than they were back then, because it just 200 feet sea level globally would just that's incredible to me. We come back to places like Egypt where just imagine 200 feet today, that would take away so much of the world. It would take away.
We have the Piri Reis map, which shows Antarctica completely without ice, and
That's
that
true.
was, so.
that was 1500 or so, that map.
Yeah, and they were taken from even older maps.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Sure.
Absolutely. I mean, Piri Reis map is a great example because of Antarctica, but even the map Columbus used to come here, it does not have Antarctica on it, but the detail of the known world on his map is incredible, and their navigation points and this map, just like Piri Reis, comes from earlier maps. They come from earlier maps. Boy, I really wish we had those maps, but
they're somewhere.
I know it. There's the Piri Reis map is really incredible to me because if I'll touch on that for a minute because I have to. I actually have a copy of it right here, coincidentally, on my desk, and I was checking it out. I really wish I could read all the text that's written down over South America. I really wish I could, but they have a little guy over South America, like a human, like a little man, and he's like a real hairy guy. Like he's just like looks like fur, and he's got red hair. And biblically, that's a description of Jacob, right?
Or the Nephilim, one or the other.
You're right. Well, it could very well be. You could be right about that. I just know when he came out, he was like the barbarian, and he was animal-like, goat-like, where his brother dressed himself up in goat skins and was able to fool their blind father because he came out furry, like with goat fur,
yeah, right.
and he had red hair. And he was and the scandal between him and his brother happened. They were tricking their father, and he went off out into the faraway land, the land of Barbara, the barbarians. It became known as land of Barbara. But I thought it was interesting that they were depicting that type of looking person, unless there was a lot of redheads here when they came to the Americas.
You know what's funny about that story is I was in Uruguay, I don't know, maybe 7 years ago, and I was pretty far inland in this little place called Salto. But what they had was a museum there, and in their history, they had when the Spaniards and the Jesuits first came over to their area, they had people there that were really tall and really big, and they have pictures and stuff of them. But they would wear skins and stuff. They almost looked like Bushmen, but like Neanderthalish. And they'd have like little skinned hats and stuff like that. But they were really tall, and the people would call them giants. I think that the anthropological people kind of shot that down because maybe some of their headdress made them look a little bit taller than what they were, blah, blah, blah. But it was interesting because you see these people, and some of them were pretty damn tall.
Yeah. Well, and you were the one who mentioned to me of these stories, which I didn't know about redhead people possibly here in the Americas early on.
Yeah, they were feared by the American Indian population.
Yeah, right. And this map also, it does have this very hairy person with red hair, but it also has stranger animals not in existence on the map. It as you mentioned, it shows Antarctica without ice. It shows Antarctica with animals, as if there were particular kinds of animals living there. It was like a good map of land masses and what you'd expect to see there, what kind of people and what kind of animals. It's an incredible piece of work for 1540 or whatever it is.
I heard some guys discussing, and they were saying about the giant squids, because you can see on the whales get into it with these squids, and evidently these squids are like really big. That maybe in antiquity, that these guys, because you always see these giant octopuses in all those old sailing maps, they're like all over the place, and they're like. Maybe they thought that some of the boats those big boats that they were making at the time looked like a whale from underneath, and they would come up and try to snatch it, and maybe that's where some of these tales had come from.
You know what? I always wondered about that map, the language that all the inscriptions that are on there. It almost looks Arabic, but I know it's not. What do you know what language that is, Joey?
No, not enough to quote it. But I know, Tim, you had a good point. You wanted to mention with like Durer's coat of arms. You sent the message with you're referring to the barbarian looking one,
right?
Yeah,
right.
Yeah. He does paint a heraldic crest with an individual holding it, and it's confused people up until today on whose family crest it could be or why. It's supposed to be the patriarch of the family's location, but the family crest is unknown. And again, it's an excellent example of what you'd find on the map. It's a man completely covered in fur, greenish fur, and
the ankle. If you look at his legs, the angle of where the ankle would be is animal-like, not human-like.
Yeah.
Always intrigued.
Yeah. Well, it's real interesting because we're also talking about Dürer north of the Alps before the Renaissance and Gothic times. North of the Alps, this was the land of the barbarians, land of Barbara, whatever you want to call it. That was the known place. It was just the far off land, but who knows? Who knows? I could tell you this: there, around the year 1500, 75% of royal families had red hair. They all do.
Yeah, that's a very interesting point, actually. Jim.
Yeah, I mean they really do. I mean Prince Harry's a good example of one, but if you go back to Renaissance times, they all do. All the royal families do have red hair.
It's also funny, Joe.
That goes back to the Khazars. I'm sorry, go ahead, Dave.
No, in the recent issue of Archaeology magazine for March, April of this year, they have a little article called "Barbarian Body Modification," and it's from northeastern France, and they discovered a female skull, and it was elongated, and she had all kinds of pins and blah 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 blah. But the barbarians were squashing their skulls too for some reason.
And this was in France.
Yeah.
Wow. Yeah. I often forget how rich the human history is throughout Europe. I always think it was just in the Middle East, Asia, Africa, and there were Neanderthals in Egypt. In Europe. This is just what I learned when I was young, and it's really not the case. Back that long ago, there were plenty of advancing civilizations. I'm also learning a different look on the barbarians. History's told us they were really just like terrible Viking kinds of people. But
they had a rich culture.
Yeah, what I see, like Nuremberg, for example, north of the Alps, it's in the barbarian territory. That was a major city since the year 1000. Major city. It was the center of the Holy Roman Empire for hundreds of years. And we often forget about all of that. We think it was just the terrible Dark Ages until the Renaissance, but my goodness, man, not the case.
I was gonna say biblically, being a eschatology, more of my focus being in eschatology, which is prophecy. When they talk of Daniel and both of the two legs, it's the Roman Empire that they're talking about, the Eastern Western leg. What most people don't realize is that the Eastern leg lasted 1,000 years longer than the Western leg. When Rome fell, the other part in Asia and in the Arabic lands had gone on for basically another 1,000 years. So,
right. Well, that's going right in here because we have, if I could just stay with Nuremberg, we have King Sigismund who make sure all of the Holy Roman Imperial regala, the crown, the scepter, the spear of destiny, all of these things. This is when he returns it to Nuremberg, and he puts it into law that they're to stay there forever. And they're not allowed to leave there. And for 400 years, every Holy Roman Emperor had to travel once a year to Nuremberg to see these treasures, but obviously their coronations were there in Nuremberg, and it was for 400 years it sat like that. That's where the crown jewels had to sit, and that was the center of the Holy Roman Empire. And
I was gonna say the Habsburgs had a lot of that stuff. I mean, they were one of the really big families,
Bingo.
But they actually. The Habsburg Museum had the Spear of Destiny, and when Hitler went into Austria, that was the first place he went to snatch it. As a matter of fact, on Brad Meltzer's Decoded, he had one of these guys, and it was supposedly this guy was a bodyguard for some very powerful guy, and they called themselves the Sons of the Nephilim, and
did they really?
Basically, they had it was a really Marzulli does it up, and he actually snatches this guy and gets him to talk about this in one of the Watchers series. But the guy is like, oh no, he goes, this guy was just like, you go ahead, do you tell the story? It's people won't even bat an eye. They'll just think it's a story. But it's like they want to get their guy. It's like the Antichrist guy. They want to get their guy elected. They want to build a third temple, and then they want to take the spear and spill his blood in the temple and basically make the abomination of desolation. And you're like, holy crap! There's like all kinds of stuff going on that people have no idea about, and that's just one of the ones that makes it out to television.
That was an eerie episode of that show.
Yeah,
the ending of that show really gave me the heebie-jeebies.
Well, that's wild,
in
man.
Particular, yeah. No,
well, I'll tell you.
I've tried to find that episode online because I saw it when it was aired live, but I could not find that. I looked hard.
Well, I did not see this episode, guys. So help me out here. Is there more than one spear?
No, this is the deal. Supposedly, the guy that this bodyguard worked for, this driver bodyguard worked for, snatched the spear from Hitler or wherever it was during the war and smuggled it out. Now he possesses it, and he's like, people come to him and are like, he's a super powerful man because people like are in like reverence around him. He's like, it's really creepy. And they're like, these guys think Lucifer's the good guy and the God of the Bible is the bad guy.
Right.
And he's like, do you believe that? And he's like, no. But I mean, right after that episode, Marzulli got him and like really grilled him, and you're like, holy crap, this is like some really heavy stuff.
Wow, it really is.
So
I guess
those
there's
people-
more to it than I initially thought.
Well, he's just going, they don't care if they get killed. They have a plan. They have an operation. So you
Yeah.
start to realize people get into some of this crazy stuff. And, believe you me, I'm already in a tinfoil hat club with UFOs. I'm in the Bible end of it, too. So I kind of get double hammered. But you start, things start making sense and things start clicking in. And you realize there's a whole undercurrent of stuff going on that most of us have no clue about.
Well,
what I remember most about that his story was that somebody was like a chauffeur of a very powerful man. He said he wouldn't say who it was, right?
Yeah,
And,
it's a chauffeur bodyguard, but yeah, exactly.
Put you can enter whoever you want there. Use Mad Libs. Go ahead, Ted Turner, George Soros. You name whoever you can think of. And then apparently he basically was bragging that he possessed it.
Huh.
He possessed the spear, and that he was part of the Sons of the Fallen. And he went on to tell him, I don't know, maybe the guy had a couple drinks in him, but it was pretty creepy stuff.
Well, because I was under the impression that the Spear of Destiny. Well, let me rephrase this. I'm just going to start here. The Holy Roman Imperial Regalia, the scepter, the crown, the spear, the cloak. There's a whole coat that goes with it. There's everything. Most of this stuff, all of these jewels and crowns were worn back to Charlemagne in the year 800. So they stayed in Nuremberg until the 1700s when war broke out, and they were brought to Vienna for safekeeping. And they stayed there for a long time. And then when World War II happened, yes, Hitler did go to Vienna, and he did take the whole Imperial Regalia. And the story goes, Eisenhower and the Monument Men, the movie that just came out, they found all of these treasures and returned them, not to Nuremberg, but returned them to Vienna, where they currently sit in Habsburg's castle in Vienna. So it's the Habsburgs claim to have it, and I have pictures of one that they have. I don't know if it's real or not.
There was a show about that, Joe. I think they had it like one of the History channels, but maybe there is a couple of them out there for all we know. Because some people I remember there was a squabble over some of the materials or how one of these looked, or some sort of something they were squawking about, but. Well, that's really good. Because if they're sitting in the museum over there, then this guy can't have it.
Well, it's true, but I've also heard that other parts of the collection on display in Vienna are duplicates. Of course, I don't know this for real.
There's many claims that the one in Vienna is it's just. Not only is there one in Vienna, but I heard that there was another one somewhere else in Europe as well. A lot of people lay claim, groups lay claim. Like look at what is that? In Ethiopia, they claim to have the Ark of the Covenant.
Right.
But nobody's allowed to see it.
It's very true. Very true. However, someone does give their life in that case of Ethiopia for guarding that.
Right. Well, what a lot of people don't know is when there was a big war there, and the war was encroaching on the Ark, the Israelis had helicopters sitting up at the top. They were waiting to. Well, a lot of people think they snatched it and took it back, but
I did not know that at all.
And then brought it back. Yeah.
Wow.
Well, I wouldn't be shocked if there was a lot of controversy with this spear, only because. It's got some historic roots. I mean, there's a nail in there.
Every empire, every leader of every empire that ever was, supposedly has possessed a spear. Actually, I got a book called the Spear of Longinus or something like that, Spear of Destiny, and that they're saying that everybody who's ever been in power has possessed that spear.
Is that right?
Is that bizarre?
Yeah, it is bizarre, but I have to brush up on that because there's a lot of truth to that then too. Because, like I said, that was sitting there in that collection since Charlemagne in the year 800.
I'm actually a direct descendant of Charlemagne. Yeah, my Scottish families are direct descendants of Charlemagne.
Oh, you're serious?
Yeah.
Wow, we got to go get your spear, buddy. We got to go to Savannah, man.
That is yours.
Wow, that's pretty cool, though. That's incredible. I got my roots back pretty far, but no Charlemagne for me.
Most of my relatives were paupers.
I'm sorry to hear that, Tim.
Well, that's all right. I'm breaking them.
Yeah, from what I understand, my family wasn't. They were very rich, and then they came over here, and then they were paupers.
Yeah, I think that's kind of how it goes. That's the American dream. But cool stuff. We're gonna have to talk about that Spear of Destiny. I'm gonna have to brush up on that a little bit more because I heard a lot of claims that there were a few of them, or I know that there was a duplicate made. I know there was historically, maybe even King Sigismund, Emperor Sigismund, maybe he had one made. We could check. I'm going to check on it. I think there was one made to be given to King Ladislav of Poland that would have been early 1400s. So there, I'm
dropping some names, Joe.
Well, King Ladislav. I think they even have I think there's even a Saint Ladislav, but King Ladislav. Yeah,
King Ladislav.
Yeah. Old King Ladislav. It's like he got the duplicate. He got a duplicate, so he wasn't worthy of the real deal. But he wanted something for the mantelpiece at home. I can't blame the guy. He wanted a fancy spear too. But I'm under the impression that spear goes back to Constantine.
Hey, just to touch base, look up in the chat room. I want to know what book that was that we were talking about. I think probably the one that Dave was referring to, with the Spear of Long.
What map were we referring to?
Oh, what book?
Yeah, I think it was called the Spear of Destiny. It was funny because I'm talking to the guys from the Sidonia Institute, and one of the times they came and spoke, that was one of the books they had on their table. So I bought all their books and bought that. And I read that, and I was like, this is a really good book. And it was the Spear of Destiny book. And I was just like, but they're showing all the historical facts of who possesses it, and you're like, wow, this has really got some serious history to it.
Yeah, you're right. Yeah, someone here in the chat room also says Plato talked about Atlantis, and he did. He said it laid beyond the pillars of Heracles, and he spoke about it pretty good. Actually, I think the majority of what we know of Atlantis comes from his description, where it's circular bodies, land, two by land, one by land, two by sea, and so on and so forth. But we have to find the pillars of Heracles. That's the key. That's the key. Not Hercules, not the pillars of Hercules, not the Strait of Gibraltar.
Heracles.
I would encourage people just going up the coast a little bit more into Portugal to a little town called Heracles right there, and you'll find a giant clockwork in the landscape made there for ancient navigation. As everyone knows, Portuguese were major sailors even before the time of Columbus. Who else were those? Knights Templar peoples. We've heard of them before, right? Yeah, they were all in that region there.
Portuguese are renowned.
That was the Iberian Peninsula, and Knights Templar. They had a pretty good navy too. Weren't they known for their ship faring? No, just battling. I thought they had a big fleet. I thought they were seafarers. We have to find out about that.
Yeah, they're just Englishmen.
Just English blokes. I know it. Well, I'm going to try to get back to the LiDAR here before I run the show out. But you guys have me really intrigued about the Spear of Destiny here. so I got to track it down. Well, I thought I knew where it was, and I have a good chance of checking on it because I actually have someone coming to stay. Someone's coming here from Vienna in just a couple of months, so I could send them back to the castle. I've already sent them in once for great pictures, but well, you know, with that is I understand there's the possibility that some of the jewels are duplicates or replicas for display, but it was just puzzling for me because like the crown itself, it's a really old crown, you know, like really old where a lot of the jewels aren't even I guess we would call them polished today, you know, put into geometric forms, and you know, they're still kind of rough stones and they're set kind of rough. It's a primitive type of crown, but it's really cool. Like there's a few blemishes. One time you could tell maybe it got a little damaged in battle or having to hide it somewhere. You know, it's been damaged and not repaired. And so I was just saying, you know, to do the same with the duplicates on some of these things, and I guess it's possible, but it's pretty cool. I just always thought the spear was there. But I guess whoever controls the world, if they had it for so long, the spear can't really be there.
You want to hear an interesting little fact about Charlemagne?
Yeah, actually I do.
Charlemagne and UFOs. During Charlemagne's time, evidently UFOs were prevalent, and they thought they were, you know, either demonic entities or somebody pulling for the other side. Charlemagne made a decree saying that if anybody ever spoke of that, or spoke of these UFOs or whatever these things are, it was punishable by death.
Punishable by death. See, this is incredible, man, because I take Charlemagne's word pretty good. I think he's a pretty good dude in history overall.
I do too.
And well, he's an ancestor. You have to. No, can't talk bad about your family. You know, but historically, he was all right. You know, and you know, it's just pretty wild to even hear that because, well, we know
out of the will.
You know, there's just historically the UFOs through medieval and Gothic art into the Renaissance. You know, it's there. It's there. These discussions, I'm sure, were taking place. A lot more so. Well, these people were actually observing the skies, and they actually had intelligent people doing this.
Yeah, there was no distractions like television and stuff like that. You got, you know, no light pollution and all that other stuff. They got full on sky.
They took things kind of serious. You know, they took life serious back then, not like we do today. It's all about entertainment these days, guys. That's what it's about. But I got here in the chat room, someone said Plato said Atlantis was past the pillars of Hercules and the Gibraltar. All right. I'm pretty sure it was Heracles. I'm pretty sure it was Heracles, but yeah, it's Heracles. It is. It is. I'm just going to go on the limb and say I'm the Plato guy here.
I think it's fake, Joe.
I'm actually a descendant of Plato, and no, I mean it's been open to translation. Is really what it boils down to, is because these Straits of Gibraltar were typically known as the Pillars of Hercules, but the earliest translations were Heracles, and for my personal research, I just really lean towards Heracles a lot more.
Well, who was Heracles, Joe?
Well, not my.
Was he worthy of having straits named after him? You know what I'm saying?
No. It was the monument building. See, Hercules. It in the time around 1500. Around the Straits of Gibraltar, there was a town on the African side of the coast in Morocco, current-day Morocco, pretty close to the shore, and it was named Hercules. And so it just really got associated with it around that time. They just assumed historians, I'm saying assume, they just kind of filled the pieces of the puzzle saying beyond the pillars of Hercules is, everything out there into the open sea was, the vast wide open, the unknown. And there was no town of Hercules there in the time of Plato or Socrates. But Heracles would have been over there. And it's still Heracles today. However, the pillars part is just going up because each side of Gibraltar, there are cliffs on each side that resemble some sorts of spires, if you will. I understand why it works, but I'm also not shocked that all the research on finding information beyond the pillars of Hercules end at the Strait of Gibraltar. There's nothing else to be found right there. So Heracles is a good way to go because you'll find a land of navigators. As Dave was mentioning earlier, there were many civilizations that were seafarers. Sumerians are a good example of them. The Etruscans are another example, which do come from the Phoenicians anyway. So these are, and the Etruscans are the ones who actually, my greatest grandfather Plato would have been an Etruscan. So these are the same type of people, and they were seafarers. They really did control all the Mediterranean, and they did all the ship faring through over to Constantinople, and were handling all the trade through the east by ships, and they set it up pretty good, and they had Greece and Sicily and all those regions, but kind of got squashed out by Rome in time. And
I think that's another thing, Joe, is I think they used the LiDAR off the coast of Italy, and they went around to a few spots, and there's like a ton of sunken cities evidently over there.
There is a ton. Even all along the coast of Greece and even Italy, you are right. My goodness, the amount of civilizations, it's like, I mean, really, when could this water level have come up? I hate to return to this, but it was like there were so many civilizations let's just say, 3,000-4,000 years ago that are just completely underwater, just like as if it happened suddenly, though. And it really just blows me away. I'm really not stuck on the whole just ice age, glacier melting. I really think that there was something majorly, a major contributor to global flooding. I'm really sticking to this, that I think a lot of these facts are really starting to come out.
Well, I think what a lot of the meteorologist guys say is that we're more likely to go through a cooling period where we get a lot of this ice type stuff than we are a warming period. The warming periods are kind of, they kind of come and go, but it all depends on, I guess, what the sun's doing, because that would determine how much melt you're going to have. And we still have a lot of ice on this planet now. Imagine all that ice melted down in a really long, warming spot. Yeah, you could very well have a lot of the planet underwater.
Yeah, very well could. You're absolutely right, especially when we just look at something like Antarctica, where they have a couple miles of ice on there. It just blows me away. I guess the scale of the Earth, or I forget how small it is sometimes, that something like that, Dave, the glaciers melting could really drastically increase the oceans. Because I look at it and say, to raise the oceans 10 feet across the world is an incredible amount of water.
I think it has a little something to do with the proximity of the moon at that time, and I'm more in the school of well, it just happened right now how the polarity has completely flipped. From the electromagnetic field of the Earth apparently has flipped.
They're about to.
Right.
Yeah.
Well,
I know they're worried about
I believe
that.
that all of these things have a lot to do with the weather.
Yeah, well, Dave pointed it out a few weeks back about the polar wandering. It's the name for when, let's just say the North Pole, it starts wandering from its location. Right. And it doesn't necessarily have to happen overnight. they said it could move as much as just a degree every year or so. And, over 20 years, it's a big difference. And
that's just a blip on the radar.
It is, yeah. It sure is. And, we have to remember that something happened, let's say around, in the middle 1300s, that something changed. And we entered a little ice age, and there's a lot of people speculating that we're really just coming out of it now. Because
it's funny because we're in the warming spot now, and there's some people who think it's going to start getting cooler. But I know that the UN or somebody was going after China for pollution because they're saying it's global warming, and China's like, yeah, hey, we got no problem with this. We've been cold all the time, and things are warming up, and we kind of like this. So it's good for production. It's good for production, so just leave us alone.
Well, you could work better in a fairer climate, right?
Well, I think they were running, like you said, that Europe was got an ice age, and even nowadays, I mean, even in the summertime, like in France, they lost I don't know how many old people because the kids went on vacation and left their folks at home. Like, and I'm assuming they don't have any fans or air conditioning over there because dozens of old French people just kicked off because of the heat. But
wow.
They say they lose more people when it starts to get cold than they do in the heat. But there you have it.
Yeah. Well, I mean, this is in the 1300s. Well, Europe's an easy one because they have great records, but this is when everything started freezing up, and then they even had a few summers, a few years without a summer, I should say.
Yes, exactly.
There were some instances I read of where they were getting full out blizzards in July. And it's it just sounds, we say, wow, that's crazy, but we're talking about the whole continent lost their crops. There's no growing without seasons, and it's wild, man. Having just like a year of darkness, and it's pretty crazy. It's I don't know if that was meteorological. I don't know if a volcano went off around that time, really alter things in this area.
That's a good question.
This planet, but. Besides this winter here that you're having in the Northeast, when I was young, just a few years ago, well, decades ago, actually, a winter break from school, the ponds and all the water, they used to freeze up and used to be able to play hockey on the ponds or do whatever. And then, when I started coming out of high school, into the last few years, I really didn't see that much freezing up. It was all the ponds that used to freeze solid just would never freeze over anymore, and I was really seeing a lot of change. But this year really threw me for a loop because I don't know what this polar vortex is. I've never heard of one before, but we had a few of them. And
but the funny thing is that the sun's been going through this ramp up cycle, and it does it like every 11 years or something to that effect. And the last few winters here in the Northeast, I mean, we've hardly gotten any snow. And for like maybe 2 or 3 winters in a row, it was pretty mild. But that was at the sun's peak. And now that the sun has gone through its solar maximum cycle and it's on the downswing, now we start getting the weather again. So people are saying, oh, I think it's going to be a really mild winter. And I kept saying, we're going to get hammered this winter. And they're like, I don't think so. I'm like, I'm pretty sure. And we pretty much have gotten hammered this winter.
Oh, we got hammered. And I'm saying it without any snow. It was just a rough winter here. But I also heard we have the return of El Nino this year. And I said, well, I haven't heard that one in a while since Chris Farley did that skit on Saturday Night Live.
Somebody had posted something like, where'd El Nino go? All of a sudden he disappears. It's like, dude, nobody's heard from him for a while.
Right, where's El Nino? I have a feeling I might hear from him this year. Because if we had a winter like this and El Nino's coming through, my goodness. I think the last time El Nino happened, I think South Carolina got nailed by a hurricane. So I might have a hurricane party this year.
Yeah.
Yeah. I always do, Dave. Always. But we're almost at the end of the show, guys. We're almost at the end of the show. What else did we want to say here? Oh, you know what I wanted to say? If I could jump all the way back to Mexico again, and I really wanted to bring up that the sun worshiping observatory found in western Mexico it dates back to about 1000 AD. Now these guys say that they're sun worshippers. They really don't specify really on what that means. They could just really study the sun's travels and the stars at night for, so many purposes we can really pile through. But what I found out about it was really cool was that it was more of an article expressing the travels of the people. That they had a sun worshiping temple that was built there, and it's pretty crazy that it wasn't found before because it's kind of in the wide open as far as I'm concerned. But it was basically kind of cut into this hill a little bit, and it's basically used for a center of commerce for travel, for navigations, and it's pretty cool because this is in Mexico, between Mexico City and Arizona, and down we have the Aztecs 1,000 years ago, and they appeared to have been a completely different culture, although they were very astronomically keen. This civilization here seemed to not show much of the teeth of the civilization. There's I like the symbology. Dave, Tim, you're going to love it on this, but a lot of the symbology found, there's a lot of the spirals, found there. That's my kind of stuff. And they're properly done, carved into stone, which I like to see. That I would say they figured out some things quite well mathematically to build these things, and it's pretty cool. I just thought I'd mention the sun observatory on a day that we just did daylight savings, which I think is BS, by the way. I don't appreciate daylight savings at all.
Especially when they take an hour of sleep.
Yeah, I just don't understand why we do it anymore. I really don't see the benefit of it. We got to pick one or the other.
Yeah, we don't have any kids working crops anymore.
Right. Yeah. I really don't talk to many people that are happy about it. It's not like, oh, thank God, we have daylight savings. It's it's no big deal.
I don't think the Amish are going to get really bad shape out of this.
No. But, there's a few states here that don't do it. Arizona doesn't take part in daylight savings. They don't have it.
You're right.
Yeah, my sister lives in Arizona, and every time I mention daylight savings to her, it's a reminder. She said, "Oh yeah, I forgot. The rest of you idiots do daylight savings." It's like, yeah, we still do. Yeah. So I have to figure out, what time it is now. Like today, it changes. If I were to call her in the evening, kids might be sleeping, and it is strange. I don't know why we still continue to do it. It's really kind of silly at this point. Do you guys know, are there any other countries that partake in this? Are we the only people who do this?
We're probably the only idiots that do it. But there are a lot of countries. Well, think about it this way. How many other countries
don't have clocks?
Don't use it. Think about it.
Yeah. It's I know there's a few civilizations with primitive clockworks, but I think here myself, I'm going to put my vote in that I would be really happy to hear this is my last daylight savings.
Well, you know what you should do? You should go on the White House website and you can start a petition. Because if you get 25,000 people to sign the petition, then the White House is required to give you an answer.
Well,
there's all sorts of messed up stuff on there. Some fun stuff.
See, I thought they just made this attempt to get all these signatures for information release on UFO sightings.
Yeah, they basically said, count salt.
I guess it all depends on what you believe that those the administration.
Well, I don't believe much of it. I know I'm being told a lie quite often. I know that. I just know if the White House gets a letter from me for a petition, it most likely won't be about daylight savings. Most likely.
And you don't even have to do a letter, Joe. Just type it in. It's right on the website.
I'm scared to go on that website.
I know. I thought the same thing. But
I'm not going to lie to you. I'm just not going to do that. I'm just not. I draw enough attention to myself on a daily basis. I'm not even going to get into that. But I'll tell you, it would just be nice to not have to do this thing every few months, this daylight savings. It really doesn't serve me or anyone I know any benefits at all. I don't understand it. But with this LiDAR, guys. Don't look LiDAR, guys. Tonight, we'll catch us next week. This time Sunday.
Revolution Radio at freedomslips.com. And we'll be right back after this message. Revolution Radio.
You don't see it, do you? How close we are to absolute chaos? The sick ones are sitting on their fat asses, eating and drink themselves into a stupor, polluting the world without a second thought while it goes down the toilet. Nobody wants to do the nasty work. You know, the shit that we all just think about. Most good citizens are just along for the ride and then bitch and moan and complain about everything when it doesn't work out. Not me. Get it done.
Revolution Radio, where we do the nasty work. www.freedomslips.com.
Enjoy your
extra big-ass fries.
You didn't give me no fries. I got an empty box.
Would you like another
extra big-ass fries?
I said I didn't get any.
Thank you. Your account has been charged. Your balance is 0. Please come back when you can afford to make a purchase.
No.
I'm sorry you're having
Come
trouble.
on. My kids are starving.
Thank you for tuning in to Revolution Radio. Here at Revolution Radio, we believe in freedom of ideas, freedom of speech, but above all, we believe in freedom of existence through self-reliance. This station is 100% listener-supported, and as a fundraising promotion, I have a kick-ass free gift for a $100 donation. 35,000 seeds. 25 years in the freezer.